Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. So, this is a topic that I think we all want to know about, highly regarded information. So, we'll get started to figure out how to get paid what you're worth. So, today's agenda, we're going to cover Know Your Worth, 3 ways to answer questions about salary expectation, what not to say, the negotiation dance, I call it, 5 rules of negotiation, and how to counteroffer. So I feel like family now, and the fact that you all know me probably pretty well. But for those that don't, I'm Lisa Holmes. I have spent my entire career in human resources, working for Fortune companies, some privately held ones. Have a consulting practice now called Strategic Performance of Los Angeles, where I do all things human resource oriented. So consultancy, executive coaching, career coaching, outplacement, organization effectiveness, strategic and women's leadership retreats is what I do a couple of times a year. And I've been blessed enough to be able to speak and quoted in a couple of different media outlets. So know your worth. So I want to just very quickly dive into it because at the end, as you all know, I love to leave time for us to dialogue and get some burning questions answered before the end of our session. So I wanted to take a look at, firstly, how to understand the scope of the work. So just as well as an employer wants to interview you to find out if you're right for the job, you have to understand that you also are in doing the same thing, right? Interviewing them to establish whether or not they're right for you. How you do this is I see this in 4 little buckets. Who is the employer first? What were the last 2 projects that they worked on? Where were the projects distributed? What did the project gross? And will this project be consistent with the past 2 projects? Why do you want to know this? You want to know what is the employer bringing to the table for you other than just a paycheck. We're going to get to the paycheck, but you need to clearly understand what I say is the WIFM, what's in it for me. And these are questions that you can ask conversationally. So if I was the employer, right, and you and I were talking for the first time, this is kind of the tell me about yourself, right? They're going to ask you the same questions. Here's some ways that you can dive a little bit into who they are and what they can bring to the table. And this, I promise you, will be information that you will use along the way to help you establish how much you are worth to this person. So conversationally, you just say, oh, great to meet you, blah, 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 right? So tell me about the last 2 projects that you worked on, right? Or that you produced or directed. Right. So where were they distributed, right? What did those projects gross? So the project that you and I are about to talk about, are you expecting for it to be consistent with the past 2 projects, maybe the distribution? So diving a little bit more into the employer and what they bring to the table. Next, you obviously want to know about the script and how long is the project and the project location and how many actors. And I don't think that I know every single thing about costume, and I got a little bit of insight since I have a costume daughter, right? Costume design daughter. But again, these are points of information that you want to know, right? Add that to benchmarking information, benchmarking data for this type of project. So you want to know what is typically paid for this level of work. So you've hopefully gathered some insight in bucket number 1 about the employer. So how much did they gross on the last project? Okay. So, it starts to give you more insight as to what can they afford to pay. They are going to tell you as little as possible about what they can afford to pay. And we're going to dive into that in a little bit. But benchmarking, to my very point, is also very critical. You need to have access to benchmarking information readily at the onset of any conversation about salary. Adding to benchmarking, you need to think about mileage, your kit fees, cell phone usage, and any other thing, right, that you need to be successful in the job, in the project. And that should equal your worth. So the first thing people typically want to do is bypass all of what I just said and then cut straight to the chase and ask you, what are your salary expectations? So how do you answer those questions if you don't necessarily have the information that I just showed you on the very first slide? You really can't. It can be problematic, right? Because you're coming from a place that you are ill prepared to answer the question. So let's talk about how do you respond to that question if you yet don't have the information that you need. So example number one, how do you respond when someone asks you very quickly, what's your salary expectation? You say, my salary range is flexible. I would, of course, like to be compensated fairly for my X amount of years of award-winning experience, or however you validate yourself in the market. However, I'm open to discussing specific numbers once we've discussed the details of the position. Why does this work? This response works well for the candidate because it mentions that the applicant is well qualified for the job, because you heard me say earlier, you're going to validate yourself in some way, but is also flexible regarding salary requirements. No matter what you do, you can try to skirt around the question with the broad answer, but I can tell you, have a script of some sort prepared so you can quickly be able to respond to the question. Number two, my salary requirements are flexible, but I do have significant experience in the field that I believe adds value to my candidacy. I look forward to discussing in more detail what my responsibilities at the company would be. From there, we can determine a fair salary for the position. Why does this work? Asking for more information before committing to a salary range is a good way to avoid mentioning compensation before the hiring manager does. You can follow up with questions about the company anticipates offering the candidate who is hired. So again, you haven't said a number, you've not committed to a number. What you're doing is you're leaving it open for a continued conversation. You always want to make the other person feel as if this is conversational, not adversarial, that you're seeking to understand. So this obviously gives you a better understanding of the level of work and responsibilities that you will bring to the table, as well as we're just trying to figure each other out, right? I want you to get to know me more and let me get to know you more. Example number three. I'd like to learn more about the specific duties required for the position, which I look forward to hearing more about. However, I do understand that positions similar to pay in the range of X, and with my experience, skills, degree, and certification, however, again, you validate yourself, I would expect to receive something in the range of. Why does this work? With this response, the applicant lets the employer know that he or she is aware of what similar positions pay. The answer also mentions a range, which provides more room for negotiating than stating a set salary requirement. So back to slide number 1, when I said benchmarking is critical and that you need to have access to benchmarking updated information, right? All the time. So you know when you have these conversations how to respond when someone asks you about the salary expectation. Keep in mind though, even though you're being interviewed, we as the person who's on the other side, right, the interviewee, can often feel as if we can't um, manage the interview process. You can very much so manage the process the way that I showed you in slide number 1. You can start off by asking them those questions that I shared with you and follow along kind of that process that I outlined in the 4 buckets. And that will help you to be able to control the conversation. What not to say. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So there are some things that obviously you can say that can create not a win-win environment, but can go down the wrong path. So let's talk about what that can be. You heard me say, and I'll say again, a couple more times, right? Avoid giving a set amount. If you can avoid mentioning a specific salary until after the employer mentions it, negotiation will be more in your favor. Do not price yourself out of a job. So benchmarking information again is very critical because you cannot ask for more than what they know, right? In some cases can also be public knowledge for the interviewer, what's being offered in the market. So for example, if it's public knowledge that the position pays $60,000 and you come and say, well, I want 160, they know that that's way too high. And you need to always speak from a place of factual information. So make sure that you have access to benchmarking information. And don't be negative, even if the amount that you are often seems insultingly low. Respond gracefully and ask if there is room to negotiate. So I know that in this industry, I guarantee you that happens very, very often that I know about. And it can rub you the wrong way. Do not let it rub you the wrong way, because we're going to talk about in a minute what really is the employer's real focus, right? So we'll talk about that. So key strategies to getting what you're worth. You heard me say, research salaries before job interviews. Have access to that information on your phone or know where to get it in quick access. Know your bottom line. Calculate how much you need to earn and what the minimum salary you'd expect would be. Be prepared to negotiate. Many employers expect candidates to counteroffer, so be prepared to negotiate once you've received an offer. The negotiation dance. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I call it a dance because it can sometimes feel like a tango, right? the back and the forth, the struggle, the intensity. So let's talk about that. Why salary negotiation is important. It is a pivotal step when interviewing for a job. It's your chance to get paid what you're worth or getting close to the figure and could establish your financial trajectory. According to a 2018 survey put out by Robert Half, they say 39% of the people polled that they asked said that they have asked for more money when receiving their last job offer. But what they're really saying is more than half of new hires accepted whatever the offer was with no attempt to negotiate. According to pay scale studies, there are many reasons why people don't negotiate salary or ask for raises, but two main reasons that stand out is that they feel uncomfortable in the negotiation process and don't want to be viewed as pushy. Discomfort is natural, and especially if you're nervous about the position. So let's talk about why negotiation is important. There's no downside. Unless you're unreasonably aggressive, which I don't think anybody is, right? Or unprofessional in your negotiation, there's virtually no downside to negotiating your salary. All you're doing is asking for more money, and your employer can accept or reject that offer. And if your request is accepted, you'll instantly get more money for the duration of the job. But if it's rejected, you face no inherent penalty. In other words, there can only be a positive or neutral result and nothing negative. Integrity, research, and power. Some employers may think more highly of you if you ask for more money. If you're basing your request on objective data and research, you're demonstrating your willingness to put in the time to conduct research properly. If you're upfront about your expectations, you're showing integrity. And the mere fact that you're willing to ask for more money shows you're confident in your abilities, which could reflect well on you. So, when someone gives you an offer and we feel somewhat desperate, right? And I can understand, right, the times that we're living in right now, how that could be, that people haven't had a paycheck and might not have had one for a while. But unfortunately, being in a state of desperation can be glaringly obvious and clear in the way that we negotiate or lack thereof. We don't want that desperation to be misunderstood in any way, where you're devalued or feel disrespected or be disrespected in the process of a project. So be upfront and make sure that you display that you are confident in your abilities to gain the respect that you deserve. Employer incentives. Remember, employers are incentivized to pay you as little as possible. Repeat, employers are incentivized to pay you as little as possible. They will tend to find other places to put more money and resources if they can get away with it. They aren't motivated to give you more money up front, so they may expect you to ask for more money no matter what. So for these reasons, employers typically offer you a salary slight to moderately lower than the going rate. If you accept that figure blindly without pushing for more, you'll effectively be operating at a loss. Negotiation is a way to counteract this issue. So you are by no means being pushy. Business professionals understand that negotiation is a point of business. This is the way we do business. They negotiate in their area of the business, and you as a costume designer need to understand the art of negotiation. So let's dig in a little bit further to what I say are the 5 rules of salary negotiation. Avoid accepting the first offer. When negotiating a job offer, don't be quick to say yes. Instead, tell the employer that you'd like a moment to consider the offer and give them a very definitive deadline on when you will give them an answer or response. Ask the employer if you can provide that response to them in a delegated point in time. And during this time, sit down and write out the job offer. Go back and look at the things that you might have taken down in notes, right? If you follow the 4 buckets that we talked about in slide 1, what can they bring to the table? Do they have money, right? You know, you might know this, right, from asking all of the questions back to slide number 1. So never accept the first offer. After you've made your decision, approach the employer with your counter offer and be ready to negotiate a higher salary. Don't be the first to share a number. The art of salary negotiation is to wait for the employer to make their offer. And unless the employer asks you what your expected salary is, don't provide a number until requested. Go back to the slides that I gave you, right? Where I gave you the scripts on how to navigate around that response until you get more information. The key is to be patient and wait for the employer to present what they think is a suitable salary for your experience and skills. Number 3, keep your emotions in check. Salary negotiation can put you through a roller coaster of emotions. It can be scary, stressful, exciting, and even frustrating. Regardless of how challenging the salary negotiation process becomes, make sure to keep a positive attitude and stay professional. Number 4, remember to negotiate additional perks. Many job seekers overlook this during the negotiation process. This is what I call the benefits, right? How to get the other things that you need to ensure that you don't come out on the losing end of this project. So mileage, cell phone use, your kid fee, any other thing. So have a good idea of what those additional perks are that you require. And number 5, find balance between what you're worth and what your employer can offer. So how to counter offer? So as you can see, I'm big on giving you the script on how to say it. And so here we go. How do you counter offer? This is what you can say. I'm very excited about the position and know that I'd be the right fit for your team. I'm also excited about your offer and knowing that I'll bring a lot of value to the table based on my X amount of years of experience that we discussed during the interviews. I'm wondering if we could explore a slightly higher salary of $60,000. My benchmarking showed that the industry average for this work would be X dollars, and I'm confident that you'll be happy with how much I can contribute to your team and department. I'm letting them know that I'm very interested in the role. However, based on my experience and based on the value that I'm confident I can bring to the table, as well as I have done my benchmarking and I know what the industry average is. So I'm coming from a place of education and factual information when I'm extending the counteroffer. Here's another way. I definitely understand budgeting issues, and I want to be as flexible as possible to work with your team. I'm still very excited about joining your group and would like to explore whether $60,000 is possible given my specific experience and skill set. You can always, when I say specific experience and skill set, that's a place that you can always still continue to insert what is your expertise, how and what you will bring to the table. You can be very quick about giving a brief little overview. I'm sorry, I'm about to sneeze. A brief little overview, again, of your experience and skill set. It's all about how you word the counter offer. And hopefully what I've shared with you here will give you some guide rails to how to say it and what to say. So now this is where I love to always bring you guys off of mute. And this is where we can talk through any questions you have on how to respond or what HR people or folks who are making decisions around your employment might want to know, or how you would respond to something that they ask. So as always, no question is off limits. So please take yourself off mute. You've got me, and let's talk through anything that you might want to know. Hi, Zelda, my friend. There you are.
At this point, I'm feeling like a groupie, and I hope you don't think I'm stalking you.
I love it, though.
Yeah, and
I love it.
we all appreciate your time, really. So I always have a bunch. I'm not going to monopolize it because I'm sure other people have questions, and I have a few. So I'll start with one that's immediate, and then maybe if nobody else has another one, I'll ask you what the second one is. So I work mostly as a supervisor, not a designer,
Okay.
although I did design the last one. It's kind of weird. For some television shows, you design as a supervisor, and I wish I had had this information when I was negotiating my salary before. So lesson
Right.
learned. So with supervisors, our salaries, there's contractual set amounts for salary, and I don't necessarily think that those have to be written in stone. So would I then go in saying, because I call the union all the time and I find out what the salary is supposed to be. So I know going into accepting a job that, it's 42 whatever an hour.
Right.
So would I then go into it saying, asking all of these questions, seeing how difficult or how complex this particular show is going to be. And then sometimes I go, oh, that's going to be easy enough. That seems right. Maybe I'll make it up with the kit or whatever. But sometimes it's like, oh my God, we're on location. I have a limited amount of crew. There's, obstacles. So at that point, would I then kind of go in and saying, well, with my years of experience on these types of shows and these, I noticed with this show, we've got this happening and this happening and this happening. This amount feels more comfortable.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because what you're saying is what I just said, right? You said it perfectly. I know what benchmarking is, right? I know what it takes to do this job because I've done it before successfully, right? And so now, quite honestly, Zelda, you might be giving them some education. they may or may not know, right? However, what you're doing is I'm educating you as to why I'm about to extend this offer instead, right? The counter offer. So go back again and say, right, while the benchmarking is this, however, what I know from my years of being on these kinds of projects, just like you laid it out, and say, I know what it's going to take to do this job and do it well. And here's what I really think that works for me, right? Where I'm going to be comfortable in the place of the compensation.
Okay, good. Because I know a lot of times, or actually most of the time, the runaway train happens with the supervisor because we have to kind of keep an eye on all the spider legs that go out, and if
Yeah.
that's getting cut off, then the amount of problems that happen and money that's lost, it's a pivotal job, and so asking for what I'm worth in order to keep that together. Because I've been hired onto shows where the last supervisor really screwed up. So I feel like it's worth more to clean up the mess and then make it happen.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah, absolutely. So you all know that I'm an HR consultant, and a lot of what I do is exactly what you said, go in and clean up somebody else's mess. And so I can't get to the real work sometimes until I get a structure, a foundation to be able to move to the real work, right? And so knowing that, that means I'm going to have to put in a lot more work. It's going to task me in a couple of different ways. I might need to bring on somebody else that's going to, help me be able to run other pieces of this while we're trying to get to the real project work, right? So you have to be completely eyes wide open for them and you on what it is that it's going to require for you to do this job. And trust and believe. The reason why the last person was unsuccessful is they probably tried to pay somebody on the cheap, and the person didn't have the skill set that you have, which is what they needed in the beginning, and that they opted to go out on the cheap, right? So it's to your advantage, right, to come to the table as a more experienced person and make sure you're confident in the way that you deliver to let them know your value that you're bringing to them.
okay, okay, I'm gonna let somebody else. I always have more questions, but I see there's other questions, so I'll thank you for the moment.
That's okay. All
Lisa,
right, what else we got?
you have some questions in the chat, and I don't know.
Okay, let's
I
see
know
what we got.
agents are a little different in terms of maybe something that's not in your purview, but you might know.
Okay. So I know nothing about agents. So I have no knowledge in this world at all, right? I can pull from things that might have happened in my corporate roles, but I have no prior knowledge about agents, honestly.
So from my experience, my understanding is that you can tell your agent how much you want to do for the show, or find out from Rachel Stanley, our executive director, of what the minimum has been for each show. If let's say you were doing Lucifer for Netflix, you can call her and say, I want to do Lucifer. How much is a designer usually getting on average? And they can tell you, that particular streaming site does anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 a week. And you can let your agent know for that I know. And that's a different kind of issue. But in terms of designers, not every designer has an agent. So if you don't have an agent, you're negotiating for yourself, obviously. And if not, then you can talk to your agent about how much you think you'd like to get based on the average of what designers are making right now on whatever show that you're on. I hope that helps a little bit.
So Ivy, at that point in time, are they fully clear about the scope of the work, right? Are they fully clear about everything that they're going to have to do in the role, right? When the agent is going to negotiate the rate for them.
So the agent will give you the interview, right? You go in and you're, like I said, like if you're doing Lucifer and you ask those questions, and if they get the job, the agent then would negotiate the price. So if you know that you're going to be on location in Los Angeles and in Canada, and you have 7 leads, you can talk to your agent about like knowing how much you believe you're worth. and then the agent will negotiate for you, which is why they're, you know, they're there for you to make sure that you look like the good person and they can be the bad guy.
Got it.
Also, the cell phone, which I saw on your thing, it's a California law that they have to pay us our cell phone bill. It's either based on the bill itself or a small amount per day. So that's, even though it's negotiated, it's mandatory for our jobs that they have to pay a cell phone allowance.
Yeah, but I will tell you, Ivy, they try to get out of that every single show. So I printed out the thing and I hand it to them where it says that. And they always, even with that paper with the law, they still try to get around it. So
I know. You know, Brigitte and I are very forthcoming with those laws and make sure that everybody knows what the law is. Obviously, you have to negotiate, which sucks, but it is a mandatory California labor law. So I just have to
play with Zelda.
No.
That's what I got. Do not play with Zelda. She knows.
I don't know if that answered Allie's question. I know it's kind of a sticky wicket, but hopefully that answered.
Okay. So let's see. Do I have any more in the chat? That might have been my only question in the chat. What else you guys got for me?
Jacqueline, did you have a question?
Well, I'm just thinking, because we're hired for a lot shorter terms as illustrators, so they really try to nickel and dime us down to scale. And again, it's going in with your portfolio and saying, you know, I've worked on films, I've worked on television, I've been in the business 25, 30 years, and they'll come back and say, well, we paid the last illustrator, you know, $40 an hour. Why are you asking 50 or some such thing? You know what I'm saying? Sure. And you're only on it for 2 weeks. And they make you feel like, I'm sure a lot of, first of all, designers don't negotiate salaries. They'll send us to the UPM. And then they're the ones that play the bad guys, of course, to say, well, our budget is only scale. It's television. You can't make more than that. So it's either you want the job, you take it, or there's someone behind you that'll take it. And that's how they make you feel. So that's why I'm just wondering if that has anything to do with this discussion, which sounds more like, you know, long-term jobs as a head of a department.
So Jacqueline, I totally get what you're saying. I think the thing is, you know, you have to realize that folks will get away with what they can get away with. And I know that, you know, sometimes we just gotta say, okay, I gotta do what I gotta do, right? Because I need a check. Trust me, I get it. I think the thing is, if you can come back to, again, if you've got factual information, while I can't attest to why the last person took $40 an hour, right? That was obviously their personal commitment to you. I can only tell you that the industry pays X. Right. And I think that I'm well qualified to do so because of blah, blah, blah. Here's how you validate yourself, right? That's where you insert your validation.
Yeah, we are lucky enough that we do have in our union a wonderful representative, Philip, who tries to get us together once or twice a year so that we can discuss, you know, the range of hourly salaries. Unfortunately, film does pay a lot more than television. So, you know, we'll discuss a range from, let's say, $48 to $100 an hour. And obviously the digital artists, and I may be going off topic, so please stop.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I know the other people in the group are more costume designers. But as an illustrator, you know, and as an artist, you always like to know what you're worth, because, you know, we take our skill set very seriously, and we each have a different skill set to bring to the job. You are hired for your personal style. So when they do try to work one against the other by saying, well, you know, we can get blah, blah, blah for this much money, I have had to bow out gracefully and say, well, then I'm sorry, I can't meet that expectation.
Right.
It's not something you want to do because sometimes we need the hours, so we only can work a week or two. But other times, you know, if you really want to work for a certain designer and it's a fun project, you accept, you know, the scale, whatever it is, because you know it's a short-term
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
But everything you're saying is so spot on as far as, you know, for full-time jobs that are how to negotiate and how to balance. And I really appreciate that. I was just wondering how to work it into our freelance life, you know, for short-term jobs.
So you just said something I thought was key. You said that they hire you basically for your unique style.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your secret sauce,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
You got to make sure that you know how to present, that's your brand, how to present yourself in a way that they fully understand your secret sauce. What is it that Jacqueline can bring to the table that nobody else can?
Right. And you find that out through experience. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
You know, as more and more people come into our union and more people are working, you want to remain competitive, but you still, you know, you still need to hone your skills. And we learn this as we learn it as we attend these seminars and these meetings and how other people negotiate. Because as artists, I think I can speak for most of us, we hate talking about money. We just want to do the work. We want to get paid what we're worth. But to have that conversation is difficult. And most of us do not have agents. So we have to do that part ourselves. And you just want to get it over with as soon as possible and just get to work. So.
I think the thing is, if you can hone the skill and get comfortable with the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
go back and look at the scripts that I've kind of given you, right? And try to frame it in a way that sounds more like you, right? But it's more conversational. You got to get comfortable with the ask. If you can't get comfortable with the ask, you're going to be always struggling with getting what you deserve. Because again, to your earlier point, right, they're going to try to undercut you. And if this puts you in a place of stress and you just want to get straight to the work, you're going to always find yourself in this position on all your projects. You got to get comfortable with the ask.
That's so true.
I can tell you this. So we as women, that I know for a fact in my 30 plus years in HR are never comfortable with the ask.
Right.
Men always ask what they think that they or what they deserve, and sometimes it's not what they deserve. They don't. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's not.
So true.
The ask is
So
not
true.
equal the skill set, right? But they do ask,
They do.
and so we need to, as women, we need to test that for ourselves and start asking. You know, and get comfortable with the way you ask and say, you know, while again, I can't attest to what the last person personally committed to you, right, in the way of compensation. I can share it with you, right? Here's my secret sauce.
Right. Yeah. Because they will use the part where, well, on your last job, because they have a way of going back through payroll services or something and saying, well, on your last job, let's say you made $50 an hour and now you're asking for 60. Whereas I know for a fact, when we have the illustrators meetings, the guys are making more. And it's not, you know, what are we, Ivy, 95% women in our guild or 85%? We're predominantly women.
I would say 80. We got 20% or non-binary, depending on. Yeah, I'd say 80.
On the category, And the guys in our, the male illustrators, let's say we're 40 illustrators. I'm sure it's more now. But the guys working, the ones making the top dollars are men in our guild. So when they come to a meeting, for example, they'll say, well, yeah, you just ask. You know, you're right. It's so true. They have no problem saying, I'm worth $100 an hour.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's so funny. It's such a difference between us trying to be the people pleaser and yet selling ourselves because we know deep down we can do the job and we have the skill set. But it's that confidence, I guess, of coming right out and being bold and
Oh,
saying,
yeah.
I'm worth $100. I don't want to lose that job. But the guys have no problem asking.
Oh, no, they
So-
absolutely don't. And so I had someone in the recent year wanted me to come over and talk about a project, and we went through the whole project. And when we got to the end of it, I said, it sounds really interesting, definitely something that's in my wheelhouse because of XYZ, 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 right? And so then they said, well, how, so he wanted to cut straight to the chase. Well, what's your expectation? And I said, I'd be interested in hearing your offer. What do you think I'm worth?
It's a good answer. Yeah.
So I backed out of the what's your expectation? No, I said, what do you think I'm worth? I'd be interested in hearing your offer.
Okay. That's very good to know. I don't know how much of it can apply to what we do in terms of you're hired on a project for X amount of time, and the UPM usually says, well, within your contract, like Zelda mentioned earlier, this is the range. So yeah, it's up to us to say, well, I really am not worth scale. I'm worth a lot more than scale because of my experience and blah, blah, blah. So
Well,
it's good for you
never
to,
forget the fact, Jacqueline, that
Yeah.
you just made a very good point. Somebody's getting paid, somebody's negotiating, and men are getting paid
yeah.
more. So how does that, it's happening.
oh
You
yeah,
just gotta make it happen for you, right? It's happening.
right.
And so again, being confident to ask. You gotta ask.
That's right.
And
If you don't ask,
they're
you don't
asking.
get, right, ladies?
They're asking. They're getting it. I mean, you know for a fact because they've told you that they're getting it, right?
Yes,
So they're getting it. You just gotta ask.
yes. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Lisa and Jacqueline, I wanted to say one thing. It is interesting, Jacqueline, you brought up a good point that the UPMs work out the deals.
Yes.
What I've tried to do on TV shows with illustrators, because I know that that's a battle, is on my end as a designer, talk to the illustrator about what their rate is, what their worth is, and what that entails, to where I try to give the UPM a little education ahead of time and a little heads up.
Yeah.
So Jacqueline, I don't know if you've ever had that experience in the past, but I
A
found
little bit, a few times, yes.
better because the UPMs have no idea. I feel a lot of them have no idea how important illustrators are, or they don't. So there's very good UPMs out there, but there are a lot of them that don't know the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, each case is pretty unique, but
Yeah.
some designers do go to bat for their people or their illustrators
You
because
start practicing knowing your worth with the designer first, right? And then maybe that could help be a bridge to the UPM. And trust me, and I know I'm obviously taking this seminar for the same reason as everyone else.
we're all gleaning little nuggets of information, and I
Right.
don't want to take up other people's time. But
But
we are considered a luxury on a lot of jobs, and we don't, it's nice to be put on that pedestal for that immediate reason. And then the minute they're done with you, you're invisible. They don't know you. So we would like to be recognized for you know, our skill set, like I said, we only get to work maybe 2 weeks out of a project, but then the guys will get on these big superhero projects for 6 months. So, you know, they're constantly kind of using that as an internal argument to say, well, you know, they can work for this little or whatever. So you get it, you get worn down having to negotiate, and you just want to get it done over, and do the job.
Yeah,
But
I hear you
yeah,
there.
it's, thank you for your time and allowing me to speak, because I really,
Absolutely.
I might be the only illustrator today on this panel. So I give my time to someone else. Thank you.
It's good to meet you, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Lisa. You too. Thanks for giving us all this valuable insight.
Well, I'm a little invested.
Yeah, your daughter's a costume designer, right?
She's on the line, I think. Her name is Bria Holmes.
Yeah, right now.
No, I'm in here. I'm listening.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have a very hard stop at 11 because I have back-to-back meetings all the way through 3:30 today. So,
Well, thank you for your
as much
time.
as I love to hang out with you all a little longer, I am always willing to come back, and I'm always willing to answer any questions. So Ivy knows, right, that if you've got a question specifically for me, send it to her and I will respond. So if I can help in any way, please let me do so.